The Billionaire Next Door. Zara Williams froze on her wrought iron balcony, her cup of Blue Mountain coffee cooling in her hands. The morning sun touched her warm brown skin, and a soft breeze lifted her curly hair, but she couldn't move her gaze from the street below. Moving trucks had arrived, their tires crunching over cobblestones, and a team of movers carried crates that looked far too valuable for an ordinary home. A tall man with bronze skin directed them, his posture confident but careful, handling each item with attention. He lifted his baseball cap, revealing dark hair streaked with silver, and his eyes met hers for just a moment. That glance lingered in a way that made her chest tighten, though she had no idea why. Evening arrived, and the city settled into a quiet hum. Zara sat in her courtyard, manuscript in hand, when a soft strain of guitar drifted through the air. She set the pages aside, listening. Each note seemed deliberate, filled with a depth she couldn't name. Her heart raced as if it recognized something long forgotten, something waiting. Who was this man moving in next door, and why did his presence feel as if it had shifted everything in her carefully ordered world? What happens when two people from completely different worlds discover they might be exactly what the other has been searching for? Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe for more stories of love and connection. Tomorrow, we'll share another story you won't want to miss. Let's begin. David Chun Rodriguez noticed her struggle before she could even acknowledge it. Zara Williams had one arm wrapped around a stack of groceries while the other fumbled inside a tote for her keys. He stepped forward without hesitation. "Can I help with that?" His voice was steady, warm, unassuming. Zara glanced up, startled by his presence. He was taller than she expected, his posture relaxed but deliberate. The cut of his shirt and the quality of his trousers hinted at wealth, yet the ease in his movements suggested comfort rather than display. With a small smile, he relieved her of the heavier bags, setting them carefully on the courtyard steps. "I'm David," he said, handing over the last of the items. "David Chun Rodriguez. Just moved in next door." "Zara Williams," she replied, finally freeing her keys. "I rent the carriage house from Mrs. Beaumont. She mentioned someone would be staying in the main house, but I didn't expect this." David chuckled, a soft sound that didn't fill the space so much as it settled into it. "I get that a lot. I don't think anyone expects someone like me to move into a place like this." The encounter ended with polite nods, yet Zara found herself glancing back as he disappeared into the main house. Something about his calm presence lingered, a quiet curiosity she hadn't anticipated. Evenings became their shared rhythm. From her balcony or courtyard, Zara would hear the gentle strum of his guitar drifting through the air. She initially thought of it as background music for her editing sessions, but soon she realized it responded to her moods, shifting between soft melodies when she was tense and playful improvisations when she laughed. On nights when he noticed her lingering gaze, he would nod politely, never intruding, yet the acknowledgement created a small connection that grew stronger each evening. Conversations developed in passing about Charleston's quiet charm, the fading heat of late September, or the slow bloom of the magnolias. They discovered mutual appreciation for spaces that encouraged reflection rather than performance. David's gestures began to carry thoughtfulness that went beyond casual neighborliness. A single magnolia blossom left by her fountain, a book of poetry from the local bookstore placed carefully on her doorstep, each act unspoken but deeply considered. Zara started to notice how he handled even small tasks with deliberate care, from straightening chairs in the courtyard to gently dusting off a stone bench before he sat. She found herself observing him closely, noting the quiet grace in his movements. There was a rhythm to the way he interacted with the world that seemed as natural as her own routines. His mixed heritage hinted in subtle ways. His dark hair with flecks of silver, the bronze tone of his skin, felt like a reflection of her own layered identity, and it made her wonder if some kind of recognition existed beneath that brief glance on the first morning. Zara's mornings became quieter, more attentive. She lingered with her coffee, listening for the guitar, noticing the way light fell across the courtyard. She began leaving small tokens for him without expectation. Notes on manuscripts she thought he would enjoy, short reflections about poetry that moved her, a biscuit or two baked with her grandmother's recipe. Each offering felt intimate, even if it was never directly acknowledged. David, in turn, shared fragments of his story in casual ways that revealed his past without requiring explanation. He had been a tech entrepreneur, building ventures that allowed him to step away early and focus on philanthropic work. Yet, in conversation, he never emphasized achievements, never measured his worth against others. He simply spoke about the cities he had lived in, the lessons he had learned about people, and the importance of choosing where to invest time and attention. Their connection deepened in these understated ways. Glances grew longer, pauses in conversation more comfortable. The courtyard, once a simple outdoor space, transformed into a shared world. A place where ideas were exchanged, music and words intertwined, and two lives slowly began to overlap. Zara reflected on her own journey, her mixed Jamaican-Irish heritage, and the quiet life she had built as a freelance editor. She valued authenticity above appearance, depth over surface charm. And here was David, whose actions consistently reflected those same priorities. The realization that someone could be wealthy yet unpretentious, accomplished yet approachable, was both surprising and magnetic. It was in these subtle interactions, these evenings and mornings marked by guitar strings and exchanged words, that the beginnings of attraction quietly settled. Neither declared it, neither rushed it, yet both were acutely aware that something significant was developing. Every small gesture, every shared conversation, built a foundation for a connection neither had anticipated but could no longer ignore. By the end of these first weeks, the energy between them had changed, though still unspoken. It was in the tilt of his head when he listened, the way he paused when handing her a book, the brief moments their eyes met across the courtyard. Small details, often overlooked, began to carry meaning. Zara understood that the arrival of this neighbor had shifted the pattern of her quiet life. There was a presence now she could not account for, one that stirred curiosity, anticipation, and an inexplicable pull towards something more than her solitary routines. In Charleston, where streets held the memory of centuries, her own story had begun to intersect with someone else's in a way that promised discovery, warmth, and change. Though exactly what that would look like, she had yet to learn. Zara had gone to the Gibby's Museum of Art seeking quiet, hoping for a few uninterrupted hours among the paintings. The morning sun filtered through the large windows, warming the galleries, when her attention was drawn to a conversation behind her. Two women were discussing a recent donation, their voices low but carrying clearly enough. "Did you see that the Chun Rodriguez Foundation gave another $1 million for the new wing?" one asked. David Chun Rodriguez himself was here last week. Such an unassuming presence for someone with that much influence. The word stopped Zara mid-step. David, her neighbor, the man who played guitar in her courtyard and left books of poetry on her doorstep. Her mind raced as she tried to reconcile the quiet, unpretentious man she knew with the philanthropist described so casually in the museum. By the time she returned to her carriage house, her hands shook slightly. The notes she had been editing earlier felt insignificant, her coffee untouched. That evening, as the sky darkened with approaching clouds, she found him in the courtyard, tuning his guitar. "I found out today," she said, her voice tight, holding a stack of papers she no longer wanted to look at. "At the museum. About you." David froze, then nodded slowly. "I was going to tell you. I wanted to wait until it felt natural." Zara's chest tightened. "Why didn't you?" "You could have." She stopped, realizing her anger was tangled with fear. "You could have told me, so I wouldn't feel like I didn't know who I was dealing with." David put the guitar aside, his expression open and calm. "I didn't want you to look at me differently. I didn't want my wealth or status to define our connection." Her mind flashed to past experiences, to relationships where her independence had been subtly undermined, her choices questioned, her voice diminished. "I've had men try to control me," she admitted, the words tasting bitter. "Small things at first. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to. And before I realized it, I didn't recognize myself anymore. I'm not going to let that happen again. David's gaze softened. Zara, I understand. I've had similar experiences, though not in the same way. People have wanted me for what I have, not who I am. Relationships ended the moment money became the focus. That's why I keep that part of my life private. It's not about hiding it. It's about protecting real connection. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden crack of thunder. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, tapping against the leaves and stone. Inside her carriage house, the lights flickered before going out entirely, leaving her in near darkness. I have a lantern, David said, moving toward her with the kind of certainty that felt both protective and respectful. He handed her a small light and a steaming cup of coffee. I thought you might need this. Zara accepted it, but tension edged her movements. You don't have to take care of me, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. I can manage. David shook his head slightly. I'm not taking over. I'm offering help. There's a difference. You're capable, I see that. I just don't want you to be uncomfortable. The storm outside roared, and Zara realized her insecurities were rising faster than the wind. The contrast between his resources and her careful independence made her uneasy. She had chosen a life where she could rely only on herself, and here was someone offering more than she had ever needed, without expectation or claim. I just need to remind myself that accepting help doesn't mean losing control, she said quietly, setting the coffee down. David nodded. And I need you to trust that my intention isn't to control you either. I value your independence more than anything. I wanted to be part of your life because of who you are, not because of circumstance or expectation. There was a pause as thunder rolled overhead, rain tracing lines down the windows. The storm outside mirrored the turbulence in Zara's mind, yet within that charged space, a kind of understanding settled. Their fears, though very different, were rooted in the same desire, to be seen, not as an object or a figure, but as a complete person. She looked at him, really looked, noticing the slight tension in his jaw, the careful way he moved around the courtyard. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she, but they were honest. The realization eased some of her tightness, though her heart still thudded with uncertainty. I guess, she began, then stopped, taking a deep breath. I guess I needed to hear you say that out loud. David offered a small smile. And I needed to hear yours. We're learning each other's boundaries. That's all any of this is right now, learning. The rain continued, slowing to a soft drizzle. The lightning that had seemed so threatening now felt distant. Within the shared quiet, there was acknowledgement that trust was fragile but possible, that vulnerability could be offered without fear of manipulation. Zara realized she wasn't stepping back because she didn't care. She was stepping carefully because she did. Every decision mattered. Every word carried weight. She had built walls for protection, and now she was willing to test them with someone who had shown consistent respect. David picked up his guitar again, the soft notes weaving into the sound of rain. It was no longer just music. It was reassurance, a bridge between caution and curiosity. Zara listened, feeling the space between them shift slightly, a subtle promise of connection tempered by awareness and care. That night, the storm cleared, leaving Charleston washed and cool. Zara went to bed with thoughts racing, but no longer chaotic. She knew the next days would bring questions, careful steps, and moments of doubt, but also the possibility of something real, grounded, and entirely mutual. The discovery of David's identity hadn't ended what they were building. It had challenged it, clarified it, and illuminated the depth of the trust they needed to cultivate. The storm, literal and metaphorical, had passed, and in its wake, both were left with the choice to continue learning each other's rhythms, fears, and quiet strengths. The morning after the storm, Charleston was calm, the streets washed and glistening. Zara stepped into the courtyard, coffee in hand, and found David arranging a new set of potted jasmine along the walkway. He looked up, a tentative smile on his face, and gestured toward an empty spot on the bench. I owe you an apology, she said, settling down beside him. Her voice was steady, but the weight of what she had learned and felt pressed against her chest. I was projecting my past onto you. My fears aren't about you. They're about losing myself, about letting someone else's world become my measure of worth. David leaned back, letting the morning light touch his face. I understand, he said softly. I want you to feel safe and seen, not pressured or measured against anything else. I care about you, Zara, for who you are in your own space, not for anything I might bring. The tension that had lingered after the storm began to ease. For the first time, they spoke without caution or defense, sharing their experiences and past wounds in a way that felt grounded rather than overwhelming. As the day unfolded, their conversation moved naturally into the subtler language of intimacy, the give and take of attention and respect. David learned to ask before stepping into her routines, whether it was helping with a task or offering his thoughts on her work. Zara, in turn, began to accept these gestures not as threats to her autonomy, but as opportunities for connection. They sat together on the bench for hours, talking about family and heritage. Zara told David about her father, who grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, and her mother from County Cork, Ireland. How they had met in graduate school, shared books and music, and eventually built a life that honored both traditions. She spoke of the flavors, stories, and rhythms that shaped her identity, the laughter and quiet moments that made her feel grounded. David responded with the story of his grandparents. His grandfather, Chinese, had moved to San Francisco in the 1940s, seeking opportunity and stability, and had met his Mexican grandmother through mutual friends. They had taught him resilience, humility, and the importance of preserving culture while adapting to new surroundings. Their example had influenced every choice he had made about work, relationships, and the communities he wished to support. Through these exchanges, they discovered how much their lives were shaped by mixed heritage, how the intersection of cultures had given them empathy and an understanding of complexity. It became clear that their connection wasn't just about attraction. It was about recognizing a shared approach to life, one that valued roots, respect, and authenticity. As dusk fell, a gentle breeze rustled through the courtyard, carrying the scent of jasmine. David picked up his guitar, hesitated, then played softly. The melody was unhurried, each note deliberate, a quiet expression of feeling rather than performance. Zara closed her eyes, letting the sound envelop her. When he finished, their eyes met. Without words, they leaned closer, the space between them shrinking naturally. Their first kiss was slow, tentative, and entirely mutual, an acknowledgement of trust built through honesty and presence. It was not urgent or rushed. It was a promise that they were choosing each other consciously, moment by moment. Later, when the night had deepened and the courtyard was cloaked in shadow and starlight, David extended his hand. "Would you come inside? There's something more I want to share with you." Zara followed, and the quiet intimacy of his home reflected the care he had shown in the courtyard. There was no pretense, no performance. Their first night together unfolded with attention to one another's comfort and emotion, a conversation conducted in gentle touches and whispered words. They moved together with care, pausing to check understanding, to ensure that boundaries were respected. The night was filled with tenderness, not urgency, allowing each of them to feel safe and present. Emotional vulnerability was met with acceptance. Curiosity was met with patience. By the morning, they had crossed into a new level of connection, not defined by passion alone, but by mutual recognition and respect. In the days that followed, they carried this intimacy into small gestures, sharing breakfast on the balcony, exchanging notes about books they had read, stopping mid-walk to point out details in the architecture or flora that reminded them of childhood memories. Every action reinforced the trust they had cultivated, a rhythm of giving and receiving that neither had experienced before. They began to imagine a future without forcing it, discussing dreams, work, and travel while keeping the present alive. Zara felt more confident in sharing her creative projects, knowing David would offer insight without intrusion. David, for his part, found satisfaction in providing support that empowered rather than directed, a partnership rooted in respect and care. By the end of that week, their connection had deepened beyond the initial attraction. They had built a foundation of trust and understanding, a shared language of attention and empathy that could carry them through challenges. Their lives, once separate and carefully structured, had begun to interweave naturally, like two pieces moving in tandem without losing their distinct shape. In the courtyard one evening, David set down his guitar and looked at Zara. "I didn't know it was possible to feel so connected while still being independent," he said, his voice steady. "I think we're learning how to be whole together without compromising who we are alone." Zara smiled, reaching out to brush her hand against his. "It's a careful process," she admitted, "but it feels right. It feels like we're choosing each other, not out of need, but because we want to." And in that moment, under the open sky and surrounded by the subtle fragrances of Charleston's gardens, they understood that building trust and intimacy was a deliberate act, one that required attention, patience, and courage. Their first kiss, their first night, and the stories they had shared were all part of a new rhythm, one that respected individuality while celebrating connection. The morning light fell gently on the carriage house, illuminating stacks of manuscripts and notebooks scattered across Zara's work table. David arrived with his laptop and a folder of proposals, settling in beside her without hesitation. "I've been reviewing some programs for emerging writers," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I'd like your input on which ones might make the most impact." Zara glanced at the documents, impressed by the thoughtful selection. "These align perfectly with what I've been looking to develop," she said, her fingers brushing over a manuscript she had been editing. "If we combine your resources with these ideas, we could actually make a difference for writers who might otherwise go unnoticed." Their collaboration quickly evolved into a rhythm that balanced their strengths. David's organizational skills and strategic vision complemented Zara's editorial expertise and deep understanding of the literary world. Together, they created programs that offered workshops, mentorships, and publication opportunities for local authors. Each initiative reflected a shared philosophy: support without control, encouragement without compromise. As their professional partnership grew, so did their presence in the Charleston literary scene. They attended readings, hosted small gatherings, and connected with writers whose voices had been overlooked. Zara introduced David to her network, showing him the nuances of the community, while he provided funding and logistical support that allowed projects to thrive. Their impact was tangible, and it brought them closer together, each success reinforcing mutual respect and admiration. Beyond work, they began to weave each other's worlds into daily life. David invited Zara to foundation meetings and community events, explaining the goals behind each initiative and the people it served. Zara, in turn, brought him into her editorial process, sharing drafts, critiques, and ideas for new publications. These exchanges were not just professional, they were exercises in understanding, trust, and connection. Through these experiences, they discovered that collaboration did not require compromise of identity. Zara remained independent, leading projects with her vision intact, while David contributed support and guidance without overshadowing her role. Their partnership was a conversation rather than a hierarchy, a blending of perspectives that enriched both their personal and professional lives. Evenings often found them in the courtyard, discussing progress over wine or coffee. The conversations flowed from literary strategy to personal dreams, talking about travel, family, and the type of life they wanted to build together. They spoke openly about marriage, imagining a ceremony that reflected both their values and heritage, without succumbing to expectation or convention. Children became part of these discussions, approached with curiosity and caution rather than pressure. They considered the lessons they wanted to pass on, the ways in which they could instill empathy, creativity, and confidence. These conversations reinforced the sense that their love was intentional, deliberate, and forward-looking. Through collaboration, they also learned to navigate conflict constructively. Disagreements about project priorities or approaches were met with listening rather than defensiveness. They negotiated differences with patience, viewing each challenge as an opportunity to grow together rather than a threat to the relationship. This practice strengthened their connection, creating a foundation of resilience that extended beyond professional boundaries. One afternoon, after finalizing a grant for a local writing collective, David leaned back in his chair and smiled at Zara. "I never realized how much joy could come from combining work with someone who understands your world so completely," he said. "I feel like we're building more than programs, we're building something lasting together." Zara returned his smile, feeling the weight and warmth of shared purpose. "It's more than I hoped for," she said. "We're making room for each other and for others. That feels rare." As the weeks turned into months, their influence in Charleston expanded. The writers they supported began publishing stories that reached wider audiences. Workshops and mentorship programs grew, drawing participants from neighboring communities. Each achievement was a reminder that collaboration was about more than resources or talent. It was about mutual respect, shared values, and the willingness to invest in one another's vision. Their professional life became inseparable from their personal one, each reinforcing the other. Evening walks often led to discussions about new initiatives or ways to improve existing programs. Weekend trips included visits to libraries, community centers, and literary festivals, blending business and pleasure seamlessly. Each moment demonstrated how they could enhance each other's life without demanding change, and how success was sweeter when shared. In quiet moments, they reflected on how far they had come. From hesitant acquaintances navigating curiosity and attraction, they had grown into partners in every sense. Their love was marked by patience, dialogue, and alignment of purpose, proving that connection was strongest when nurtured thoughtfully rather than rushed. By the end of the year, their projects were thriving, their impact visible, and their relationship stable and joyful. They had learned the delicate balance of independence and togetherness, creating a space where both could flourish. Charleston itself seemed to reflect their growth, a city open to history and tradition, yet embracing new ideas and voices, much like their shared vision. As the sun set over the courtyard, David set his hand on Zara's, their fingers intertwined naturally. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "We have so much more to explore together, personally, professionally, and in life. I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else." Zara leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the certainty of their connection. "Neither would I," she replied. "We're building something that matters, for us and for others. That's a kind of love I can't take for granted." And in that moment, surrounded by the books, notes, and flowers that had become their shared space, they understood that partnership was not only about collaboration. It was about trust, respect, and the commitment to grow together while honoring who they each were. The evening air in Charleston carried a gentle warmth as David prepared in the courtyard, setting up a small area with soft lanterns and a scattering of jasmine petals. He had been working on this moment for weeks, not in grand gestures, but in quiet observation. Each note of the song he had composed reflecting Zara's daily rhythms, the subtle habits he had come to cherish. When Zara stepped out onto the balcony, her lavender dress catching the fading sunlight, David's gaze followed her with the same intensity and tenderness he had felt since their first encounter. She paused, sensing a difference in the air, noticing the delicate arrangement of lanterns and flowers that turned their courtyard into an intimate space. "David?" she asked, her voice curious, a hint of laughter in her tone. He smiled and gestured for her to come down. As she descended, the first chords of a guitar filled the space, gentle and precise. It was a melody that seemed to capture everything: the hum of her morning coffee ritual, the soft cadence of her laughter, the rhythm of pages turning as she read or edited. Each note was intentional, a reflection of moments that had become sacred between them. Zara's eyes widened as she recognized the care woven into every phrase of the song. She had heard him play countless times, yet this was different. Each pause, each gentle rise and fall, resonated with the shared history of their connection. Her heart beat in tandem with the music, her mind recalling nights spent talking in the courtyard, mornings spent in quiet collaboration, and the gradual unfolding of trust and love that had brought them here. When the final note lingered in the air, David set his guitar aside. He reached into a small velvet box and revealed a vintage emerald ring. It was elegant without excess, classic without being conventional, a reflection of Zara's understated yet distinct style. The gemstone caught the lantern light, casting a soft, green glow that mirrored the quiet intensity of the moment. "I wanted this to be more than a question," David said, his voice steady, carrying warmth and sincerity. "This is about choosing you, not changing you. About partnership, trust, and continuing to grow together. You've been my friend, my collaborator, my inspiration. I want to spend every day honoring who you are, supporting your dreams, and sharing a life built on respect and love. Will you marry me?" Zara's breath caught. The words were not unexpected. She had felt the pull of this moment for months, but the clarity and intentionality behind them made her chest swell with emotion. She looked at the ring, then at David's eyes, and in that instant, all doubts and hesitations melted away. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling with certainty and joy. "Yes, of course." David slipped the ring onto her finger, and for Zara, it felt like arriving at a place she had always known existed, though she had only just reached it. The weight of the emerald was comforting, a tangible reminder of the promise embedded in his words. Around them, the courtyard seemed to hold its breath, every leaf and lantern witness to the intimacy of the moment. They embraced, letting the world shrink to the space between them. The gentle scent of jasmine mingled with the evening air as their hearts synchronized in a shared rhythm, echoing the melody that had introduced the proposal. For the first time, they felt completely aligned, partners in every sense, connected by more than attraction, bound by mutual respect and understanding. After a moment, David stepped back, his hand still lightly holding hers. "This is our space," he said, gesturing to the courtyard, "where we've shared so much already. It feels right that it's here, where we built trust, creativity, and care, that we begin this next chapter." Zara smiled, letting her hand rest in his. The lanterns cast a gentle glow over their faces, and for a long while they stood silently, listening to the subtle chorus of night insects, the distant echo of Charleston streets, and the quiet presence of one another. The courtyard, with its familiar corners and shadows, had transformed into a sanctuary, both ordinary and extraordinary, private and universal at once. They spoke little after the proposal, allowing the moment to carry them forward. There was laughter, soft words of gratitude, and shared memories of how far they had come. Each detail of the evening, from the melody that spoke to the minutiae of their lives, to the thoughtful choice of a ring, to the careful placement of lanterns, was a reflection of the intentionality that had guided their relationship. As darkness fully settled, the soft glow of the lanterns illuminated the courtyard, highlighting every familiar detail: the stone pathway, the flowering plants, the corner where Zara often sat to edit. It was a space that had witnessed the early sparks of connection, the quiet growth of understanding, and now, the sealing of a shared future. David took Zara's hand again, guiding her to a small bench beneath the jasmine. "This is only the beginning," he said. "We'll have challenges, sure, but we'll face them together. The life we're choosing isn't about perfection. It's about care, presence, and commitment. I want every day with you to feel as intentional as tonight." Zara rested her head on his shoulder, the emerald ring catching the soft lantern light. "Every day with you already feels intentional," she replied. "I've never known a love like this, where I feel seen, respected, and encouraged. This is the life I want exactly as it is with you." The courtyard held them in quiet celebration. The sounds of their city continued in the background, unremarkable yet grounding. The rustle of trees, distant footsteps, and soft hum of life around them. And in that ordinary setting, transformed by deliberate care and attention, they experienced an extraordinary moment, the promise of a shared life beginning not in grandeur, but in recognition, respect, and the quiet magic of choice. By the time they rose from the bench, their hands intertwined, the courtyard had become a testament to their relationship, a place where love was nurtured, dreams were shared, and every day held the possibility of new beginnings. The melody of their lives played on, a song without end, grounded in reality yet elevated by the depth of their connection. And as they walked back through the familiar garden path, their fingers entwined and hearts aligned, both knew that this moment, the proposal, the ring, the song, and the shared understanding, was the natural extension of everything they had built together. It was the culmination of patience, trust, and deliberate care, a beginning that had been quietly forming from the very first time their paths crossed. The morning of the wedding arrived with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of jasmine and gardenia through their courtyard. Zara's grandmother's lace dress, preserved for generations, fit her as if it had been made for this day. She adjusted the delicate floral arrangement in her hair, woven from blooms harvested from their garden, each one chosen with care to honor the life they were beginning together. David stood near the courtyard gate, guitar in hand, dressed in a tailored suit that reflected his understated style. His eyes met Zara's across the space, and a smile passed between them, quiet and confident, as though this day had been patiently awaiting them both. The ceremony began with soft strumming, David leading the music with a steady hand, each chord carrying the weight of months of shared moments. Friends and family gathered close, the circle intimate yet full of warmth. Their vows were not elaborate speeches but heartfelt declarations reflecting their journey, the trust they had built, the respect they had cultivated, and the understanding that this union was a partnership of equals. As they exchanged rings, the courtyard seemed to glow. Every detail was intentional. The Spanish moss hanging from the ancient oak branches, the gentle hum of Charleston life beyond the garden walls, and the subtle laughter of those who had witnessed the couple grow together. In this small, intentional gathering, love was present not in grand gestures but in quiet, sustaining commitment. After the ceremony, the celebration moved to Magnolia Plantation, a place that had been part of their early walks and late afternoon conversations. The gardens provided an expansive, living backdrop of greenery, fragrant blooms, and serene water features. Guests meandered along winding paths, sampling local cuisine and enjoying music performed by David's friends, each song adding rhythm to the day. It was not about extravagance, but about connection, to each other, to their families, and to the city that had shaped their story. The reception reflected their personalities, merging David's thoughtful simplicity with Zara's love for literature and intimate creativity. Tables were adorned with wildflowers from the plantation and candles in glass holders, creating spaces where conversations flowed easily. Stories were shared, laughter echoed, and the atmosphere remained grounded in authenticity, celebrating not only the couple but the community that had supported them. Once the celebrations quieted, they set off on a honeymoon that spanned the roots of Zara's and David's heritages. Jamaica offered vibrant colors, warm breezes, and the rhythmic pulse of culture. They wandered along sunlit beaches, visited local markets, and spent time in quiet reflection about the journeys that had brought them to each other. Ireland offered lush landscapes and ancient towns, connecting Zara to her maternal heritage and revealing the threads of resilience, creativity, and warmth that ran in her family. In San Francisco, David introduced Zara to the streets of his upbringing, where the stories of his grandfather and grandmother unfolded between city blocks, cafes, and familiar parks. Each destination added depth to their understanding of one another. Differences became points of interest rather than division. Similarities became anchors in a shared life. They learned to navigate new cultures together, to listen closely, and to celebrate the small joys, sunsets, music, the taste of a dish, or the warmth of a shared glance. Returning to Charleston, they worked to blend their lives while maintaining the distinct identities that had drawn them together. Zara's carriage house became her office, a space filled with manuscripts, books, and quiet inspiration. David's foundation work continued, his days spent balancing professional responsibilities with the growing needs of a household they were creating together. Even in daily routines, they found moments of collaboration, preparing meals, tending to the garden, or simply enjoying the presence of one another. Their home reflected both practicality and personal expression. Each room told a story. Shelves with books they had collected together, corners that held memories of shared projects, spaces for music, and areas devoted to reflection. This home was not only a shelter but a canvas for the life they were building, a life marked by intention, curiosity, and mutual respect. Through these early days of marriage, the couple discovered the rhythm of partnership. Responsibilities were shared, opinions respected, and each decision approached as a team. The balance between professional obligations and personal life became a living lesson in compromise, communication, and consideration. Every challenge that arose, from household logistics to the demands of work, was met with patience and a willingness to understand the other's perspective. Evenings in their courtyard became a ritual once more. David played softly on his guitar while Zara read, their shared silence filled with the comfort of familiarity and trust. Sometimes they spoke of their travels, sometimes of literature, and sometimes of the future they envisioned together: children, growth, and contributions to their community. Each conversation reinforced their bond, making clear that their life was not a static celebration, but a continuous dialogue of respect, support, and shared purpose. By the end of their first year as a married couple, they had created a home that felt entirely their own. Charleston itself had become a partner in their story, offering familiar streets, quiet corners, and vibrant gardens that mirrored the growth of their relationship. Their lives intertwined without sacrificing individuality, blending heritage, profession, and personal passions in a seamless, living expression of commitment. Through the intimacy of the ceremony, the beauty of the reception, the discovery of their combined heritage on their honeymoon, and the careful construction of their shared home, Zara and David had established a foundation stronger than romance alone. It was a life built on conscious choices, mutual recognition, and the understanding that partnership was a dynamic, evolving process. In the quiet moments, when the city slept and the garden whispered in the night, they often reflected on the journey that had led them here. From first meetings and hesitant glances to the confidence of this shared life, every step had been deliberate, every connection intentional. And in that reflection, both recognized that their wedding was not an ending, but a continuation of a story defined by care, trust, and a shared commitment to growth. The months following their wedding revealed the quiet strength of David and Zara's connection. In the early mornings, they shared coffee on the balcony, each bringing a small ritual to the other's attention. David noticed how Zara lingered over her first sip, humming softly while scanning through her editing work. Zara observed the subtle patterns in David's routines, the careful way he handled each day's responsibilities, and the unspoken ways he made space for her creativity. These ordinary moments became touchstones of trust. Their love thrived on authenticity. Neither tried to mold the other into an ideal. Instead, they celebrated the qualities that first drew them together. Zara's independence was met with encouragement rather than challenge, while David's quiet generosity was appreciated without expectation. They spoke openly about ambitions, doubts, and insecurities, recognizing that a relationship grounded in honesty could grow in ways that surface-level gestures never could. Consistency became their foundation. Whether it was offering a cup of tea after a long day, sharing laughter over a minor mishap in the garden, or attending each other's professional events, every small act reinforced the knowledge that they could rely on one another. Daily life provided countless opportunities to strengthen their bond, not through grand displays but through steady, reliable presence. Partnership, not rescue, defined their approach to challenges. They approached decisions collaboratively, supporting each other's dreams without attempting to fill gaps or complete deficiencies. When Zara proposed an initiative to fund local writers, David lent both his resources and his counsel, recognizing her vision as her own. When David contemplated expanding his philanthropic reach, Zara offered insight and encouragement, never taking over but always providing perspective. Together, they achieved outcomes neither could have managed alone. Cultural richness played a central role in the texture of their relationship. Zara's Jamaican-Irish background brought warmth, humor, and resilience, while David's Chinese-Mexican heritage contributed pragmatism, curiosity, and creativity. They shared traditions, meals, and celebrations from both lineages, embracing the differences not as barriers but as bridges. Festivals, recipes, and family stories became opportunities to learn and honor one another's roots. In doing so, their love deepened, strengthened by a shared respect for heritage and an appreciation for the ways their histories shaped their perspectives. Challenges arose, as they always do. Work pressures, personal projects, and the occasional misunderstanding tested their communication. Yet these moments never eroded their connection because they approached conflicts with empathy and a willingness to understand. A disagreement about scheduling or priorities was met with questions and dialogue rather than defensiveness. Each resolution, no matter how minor, reinforced the principle that the relationship was built on collaboration rather than control. They also learned the subtle power of observation. Noticing when the other was tired, anxious, or in need of encouragement became second nature. Small gestures, a note on the desk, a favorite pastry left on the counter, a quiet conversation in the evening, demonstrated care in ways that required neither announcement nor fanfare. These acts accumulated into an invisible network of reassurance, a consistent reminder that their partnership was reliable and nurturing. The couple's commitment to authenticity extended to social interactions and community engagement. Together, they hosted literary events, supported young artists, and participated in philanthropic initiatives without letting appearances dictate their involvement. Each public act was a reflection of shared values rather than performative expectation. Friends and colleagues noted the ease with which they collaborated, the mutual respect evident in every interaction, and the joy they took in contributing without seeking recognition. Through these experiences, they discovered that love's strength often resides in small, intentional decisions rather than dramatic declarations. Reading together in silence, sharing a meal prepared as a team, or simply listening with presence became demonstrations of trust. The rhythm of daily life, routine, unglamorous, and intimate, shaped a connection that could withstand outside pressures. David and Zara also recognized the importance of maintaining individual identity within the partnership. Zara continued her editorial projects, publishing initiatives, and literary collaborations, while David pursued new philanthropic endeavors. These parallel paths allowed them to grow independently while remaining aligned in purpose. Each person's success was celebrated without envy, each challenge met with encouragement, and each goal supported with sincerity. They understood that a relationship built on recognition, respect, and equality created freedom rather than limitation. Authenticity allowed them to share vulnerabilities without fear. Trust ensured consistency and reliability. Partnership fostered mutual achievement, and cultural richness added depth and perspective. Together, these elements formed a life that was steady, creative, and deeply satisfying. Years into their marriage, the lessons of their early days continued to resonate. Their love was not defined by drama or crisis, but by the deliberate choices made in ordinary moments. By observing, listening, and participating fully in each other's lives, they discovered that enduring connection is cultivated quietly, with care, and with intention. From first meetings to shared adventures, from the first kiss under the stars to the establishment of a home and family life, David and Zara's story illustrated that true love is grounded in reality. It thrives when two people meet as they are, embrace difference, support growth, and honor heritage. In their partnership, both found a reflection of their best selves, strengthened by shared respect and unwavering commitment. Ultimately, their life together became a testament to love as a practice, not merely an emotion. Each day offered a chance to reinforce trust, celebrate individuality, and deepen connection. Each interaction, however ordinary, carried meaning, shaping a relationship that could endure beyond any moment of excitement or challenge. In these patterns, they discovered that the essence of lasting love is presence, understanding, and choice. The daily commitment to be fully there for one another, in ways both visible and quiet. Charleston had become more than a backdrop to David and Zara's lives. It was a living presence, shaping the rhythm of their days. The cobblestone streets, lined with centuries-old oaks and iron-laced balconies, held their memories. Morning light spilled across their courtyard, reflecting off the blue paint of Zara's carriage house and illuminating the jasmine that David tended with careful attention. Every corner of the city seemed to resonate with echoes of their shared journey, from the quiet cafes where they discovered mutual tastes in literature to the small bookstores where Zara hosted readings, bringing writers together and giving local voices a platform. Their home became a place where the community felt invited without intrusion. Friends and neighbors were welcomed for evenings filled with music and conversation, where David's guitar blended effortlessly with Zara's readings. They cultivated an environment that honored creative expression, generosity, and collaboration. The courtyard, a space once marked by solitary mornings and the hush of editing work, evolved into a gathering point for dialogue, laughter, and celebration, a reflection of the harmony they had built together. Through their joint initiatives, the couple's presence in Charleston extended beyond their immediate circle. Literary programs funded and organized through David's foundation, guided by Zara's expertise, created opportunities for emerging writers. Local schools benefited from workshops that encouraged self-expression and storytelling, cultivating confidence and skill in students who might otherwise have gone unheard. By supporting diverse voices, they demonstrated how partnerships rooted in respect and shared values could have tangible, lasting influence. Their impact extended to personal mentorship as well. Young writers who once hesitated to pursue their craft now found encouragement from someone who understood the challenges of carving out space in a world that often values wealth over talent. David and Zara became exemplars of collaboration, showing that success is most meaningful when it includes others rather than exists solely for oneself. Their approach to giving, both financially and through guidance, emphasized humility, thoughtfulness, and consistency, mirroring the principles that had guided their own relationship. Music continued to thread through their shared life, marking moments both grand and intimate. On quiet evenings, David would play an original composition inspired by the day's events, the melody echoing across the courtyard where Zara worked among her books. Sometimes the music carried the laughter of children from neighborhood workshops, other times the soft conversations of friends who lingered after readings. Each note reinforced the sense of connection they had cultivated, not just with one another, but with the world around them. Even years later, the rituals they established remained central. Morning coffee, shared planning for foundation projects, evening walks through historic streets, and collaborative discussions about literary initiatives were more than habits. They were affirmations of their bond. Each action, though seemingly ordinary, carried intention and recognition. They understood that the sustainability of love and influence alike depended on attention to small, consistent acts. In nurturing each other's growth, they also nurtured the spaces they inhabited and the people whose lives they touched. Their mixed heritages continued to enrich their daily interactions. Holiday traditions were expanded to include elements from both families, from Jamaican dishes and Irish storytelling to Chinese-Mexican customs David's grandparents had practiced. These celebrations became opportunities for education, laughter, and connection, reinforcing the importance of ancestry and the strength found in diversity. Their home, filled with books, music, and mementos, stood as a symbol of integration, a living record of love, culture, and shared values. Through every stage of their life together, David and Zara chose awareness. They recognized the quiet power of presence, the importance of listening deeply, and the significance of supporting one another in ways both visible and subtle. They learned that enduring love is expressed in small, intentional gestures. A hand on a shoulder during a stressful meeting, an evening spent organizing a literary event together, a song written in response to a shared experience. These consistent efforts built layers of trust, intimacy, and joy that would not fade with time. Their story became a source of inspiration for the broader Charleston community. Observers saw a couple whose success was defined not solely by wealth or accomplishment, but by generosity, integrity, and the ability to foster growth in others. The lessons embedded in their life together, prioritizing authenticity, nurturing trust, embracing difference, and acting with purpose, resonated with those seeking models for meaningful connection. Through actions rather than statements, David and Zara illustrated how love and partnership could drive both personal fulfillment and communal benefit. Even in ordinary moments, the essence of their relationship was evident. A quiet afternoon with a manuscript spread across the table, a shared glance while preparing dinner, or the simple act of choosing to play a song for one another reinforced their commitment. They had discovered that love does not require constant drama or extraordinary gestures. It thrives when two people consistently choose presence, respect, and care. Years passed, and their courtyard remained the central stage of life. Books were scattered across the benches, reflecting Zara's ongoing editorial projects and the new voices she helped nurture. David's guitar leaned in the corner, ever ready to fill the air with music that marked milestones, comforted during challenges, or simply celebrated shared quietude. Here, time moved with gentle constancy, yet each day brought new opportunities to reaffirm love through action, thoughtfulness, and support. Their story closed with the understanding that lasting relationships are built on more than passion. They are sustained through recognition of one another's individuality, respect for boundaries, and deliberate choices to act with care. Each morning, each note of music, each contribution to the community reflected the accumulation of these choices. In observing how they interacted, one could see that enduring love is composed of repeated, intentional acts rather than singular, dramatic moments. David and Zara's journey became a model for the community, a reminder that the most profound connections are constructed through ongoing, consistent engagement. Their combined presence in Charleston, through literature, music, mentorship, and philanthropy, demonstrated that love could extend outward, creating influence beyond the personal sphere while remaining deeply rooted in mutual respect and commitment. As the sun set over the historic district, casting soft light on their courtyard, they would often sit side by side. David's fingers moved over the guitar strings, producing melodies that captured fragments of memory and emotion. Zara would turn pages of a manuscript, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes letting the quiet surround them. In these moments, years of shared experience coalesced into a simple truth. Love is a choice, renewed daily, and it is in this repetition of choosing one another that it endures. For viewers, their story offers a reminder. Meaningful love does not rely on drama or urgency. It grows from recognition, respect, and the deliberate decision to support and celebrate another person's journey alongside your own. David and Zara's lives illustrate that with patience, consistency, and authenticity, a relationship can create both personal fulfillment and broader community impact. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you never miss stories that celebrate love, resilience, and human connection. Share in the comments where you're watching from and which part of David and Zara's journey resonated most. Your support allows us to continue sharing meaningful stories, and tomorrow we will present another tale that reminds us all why love is always worth the commitment.